But now we bring in Jared Sandler, part of the Rangers broadcast crew. My favorite crew in the business. One of the best, top to bottom. And Jared's on TV, he's on the radio. He's doing it all. He's a multimedia star now, and I get to say I knew him when he was just pre and post, and now all the way through. Jared, always great to have you on the show. I'm going to ask you some USC questions as we get to the end, so we keep our college football street cred as a podcast. But first off, Corey Seager and his hamstring. I guess it was his turn to get hurt because everyone else has.
Yeah, no kidding. Golly. I'm hopeful the Rangers dodged a bullet there. You know, the fact they didn't need to get imaging after the game is a good sign. You know, Bruce Bochy is usually pretty honest when a guy has an injury and after the game he feels like it might be some time, like with the Josh Young injury early, 2 months ago. He was pretty honest before it came out that he had the fracture. He's like, this isn't going to be just a quick turnaround. And he said, I think it's going to be all right. I don't think it's that serious. So that's a really good sign. Now, the thing is with Corey, he's had hamstring issues before, specifically on the left side. And so, I'm curious to see how delicate they are. If they work him back in, is he going to be off tomorrow and then back in Saturday? Will he DH? Because this guy's health is of the utmost importance to this team because of where their lineup is right now. They withstood it last year. He missed 31 games in mid-April through a part of May with a hamstring injury, but that was a different time. Everyone was hitting back then, and so they were able to weather that storm. Right now, he's been the brightest spot in a lineup that really has not had a lot of bright spots this year.
And unfortunately, on the injury front, Evan Carter is going to be missing some time now with a stress fracture in his back. This is not the first time he has suffered such an injury. Had a similar thing happen a few years ago. Just how concerned are the Rangers that this is something that is going to linger long term? Yeah,
I think, they from the standpoint of making decisions, Evan's not a free agent anytime soon. And so they're not faced with any sort of contractual decision. It's one of those deals where they're really in a place where they're just going to bust their tail to try and get him healthy. And when he's healthy, he's going to play. But yeah, there's no doubt that it has to, enter their mind. And a lot of people this past off season, myself included, wondered if the Rangers we're going to entertain one of these extensions that we're seeing more and more commonly given out to young players like Evan of his talent very early on in the process, even before arbitration. I mean, heck, I think there was some thought that maybe the Rangers would try and sign Wyatt Langford to one of those types of deals, and a deal where it allows the player to enter free agency still at a peak year in their career. But also guarantee them some money. And if they turn out to be studs, then, the team probably ends up saving a little bit of money. But now with Evan Carter, does that change their approach, knowing that the back might be a concern? So, yeah, it's a fair question. Back stuff is never something that, I don't know. You don't like when any player gets hurt, but, the guy breaks his forearm. You feel good about the fact, all right, it's going to heal up, and then hopefully, once he regains strength, and it might not be right away, but he'll be fine. With a back thing, you just don't know. It seems like that's there's a lot more mystery, a lot more unknown with that. With a guy like Evan Carter who relies on athleticism, and his speed, you'd certainly hate for that to be compromised because that's a big part of his game. And hopefully with a month of rest and then a rehab assignment, he's going to come back and be okay. But that's at his age. You don't like back injuries at any age, but at his age especially.
Wyatt Langford hasn't hit for the power yet. Jared, are you surprised about that? I know he's had his bumps and bruises as well.
Yeah, I think so. I'm definitely surprised. I'm not surprised that Wyatt Langford is not like an MVP candidate, like some people thought he would be after spring training. I mean, it's just I'm not saying that it was unfathomable and it wasn't going to happen. But every year it seems like we get baited into this mirage that is spring training. And, you know, you can get baited into it because a player just is awful in spring training and you just think it's absolutely hopeless, or, you know, the other side, which is kind of what happened with Wyatt Langford. It didn't help that Wyatt had all this hype and excitement. You know, there was a story in spring training that came out that the Rangers, you know, had him ready in Arizona throughout the playoffs in case there was a need. And it just sort of seemed to, you know, help shape this narrative that, you know, he was even ready last year. And so he's definitely going to be ready this year. And, you know, the reality is he's entering the league in a year in which offense is down in a big way. And so, you know, his numbers relative to the league, they're not good, right? He's not a league average player offensively by any means. It's not as bad as maybe if he had these numbers, say, 2 or 3 years ago. But you're right. The lack of power and really the lack, like he's hit one home run. It was an inside the park home run. And he hit that ball, it was, you know, a near home run in the air. He really has not had many of those. There have not been many balls off the bat where you're like, oh my gosh, this one's got a chance. A lot of ground balls, a lot of pop-ups. And, you know, some people like to use the word timing. Other people say that timing is just an excuse to kind of be a catch-all for other issues when you're hitting. Whatever the case is, he is not squaring the ball up the way he did in spring training. And frankly, guys, you know, he's spent 40 days in the minor leagues. The idea that, you know, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I told you a guy had spent 40 days in the minor leagues and he was coming up, you know, you would think, oh my gosh, you're crazy. We're seeing a little more advancement at a faster pace these days. But the idea that Wyatt Langford was just going to hit the ground sprinting was probably a little silly. The fact that he was going to hit the ground running was maybe a little silly. But to witness the results, the level or the lack of production, I think that also is a little bit of a surprise. But I guess it'll just be a part of his learning curve.
Cautious optimism that the rotation is starting to get healthier now. John Gray notwithstanding, of course. Eovaldi has a couple of starts under his belt. And it looks like Max Scherzer is getting closer. What is Scherzer's current status, and what happens with this rotation when he's able to come back?
Yeah, the crazy thing, guys, and this is just it goes to the whole idea that the minute we think we have a clue, we really have no clue. The rotation has been awesome in spite of the fact that, you know, they've had 76 starters who are on the IL, right? I mean, it really is. It is impressive. I think it's 18 straight starts in which their starters allowed 3 or fewer earned runs. I mean, that is really impressive. I think, unfortunately, the injuries have hurt the bullpen because they've had to take guys like Jose Urena, for instance, and move him into the rotation, and you know his absence in the bullpen has been felt. I think Jose Urena, I think, you know, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, I think those guys could all find themselves in the bullpen. And the reality is, as fragile as it's been so far, there's nothing to say that the whack-a-mole is not going to continue. You know, I hope that as guys come back, other guys don't go down. But, you know, the good thing is they clearly have demonstrated that they have depth to weather this. You'd like to have your best group. Eventually, Tyler Mahle will come back. And eventually, you know, Cody Bradford will come back. You mentioned Max Scherzer. The guy who's coming back this Sunday, John Gray, you know, that with an off day today and an off day Monday, they really don't need a sixth starter. It's not like they're in one of these, you know, wacky stretches where they just don't have off days. So I think their options are they can go Dane Dunning to the bullpen and have him pitch in a 1 to 2 times through the order type of capacity. Or you could, and the reality is John Gray, while he hasn't been out a while, they might not be ready to let him go 90 pitches. So maybe they need someone to piggyback him. Or you could go Andrew Heaney, who would be able to provide a little bit of versatility in the bullpen because right now they only have one lefty. And one of the guys who they've relied on to get lefties out, or at least plan to, is now their closer, and Kirby Yates. And he's a righty, but, you know, lefties just don't hit him. And the other guy is David Robertson, who's really your second of maybe 3 really trusted relievers. And so there's just not nearly as much flexibility in the way Bruce Bochy would like to use those guys. And so when you only have one lefty, and your starter only goes 5 innings, you're probably missing out on some opportunities to match up. But, what if Jake Latz isn't available, in a given game? Well, now you have no lefties. And so, as good as Andrew Heaney has pitched in the rotation, especially since his second outing, there might be a lot of value in having Andrew Heaney go to the bullpen just to provide that threat of having a second lefty in there.
The trade deadline comes up in a couple of months, and the Rangers may look like a team that just sent all their prospects away for the trade deadline, with Scherzer going to be back by then. Josh Young's probably going to be back by then, and he seems to be the fire starter in the lineup, even in spite of the other guys that they have. Like last year when he was out, their offense dipped, somewhat for that rough stretch where it looked like the wheels had maybe fallen off. And again, you didn't mention Jacob deGrom in all that as well. This could be kind of a wave of guys onto the roster that can help them boost them back into playoff contention.
Yeah, no, without question. Now, you mentioned the trade deadline, and that has been brought up in the last few days. And here's the reality. I think the Rangers at 30 and 32 have played themselves into a spot where it is at least fair to ask the question, would they sell? And the answer is we have to wait and see, right? Like, if you want a real answer, are the Rangers 5 back of a playoff spot? Are they 5 back in the division, but in second place with 2 series left against the Mariners and, a bevy of guys coming back, as you mentioned, or are they 10 games back of the division and maybe 8 games back of a wild card spot with 4 teams in between them, right? I mean, there's still so much time between now and the deadline that things can turn for the Rangers or things maybe don't turn, and they can't really get on a roll, can't get in a rhythm. But I do think that there is a scenario in which the Rangers would at least have to consider not buying and maybe selling. But I think, again, to your overarching point there, they're already they've got these built-in trade deadline acquisitions with all the guys who are going to be returning. And hopefully they start to get some of those guys back in time for the front office to really have an understanding of what to do and where to go. We always say that the team tells the front office what to do by the way they play. But the reality is, while that is still true with this group, the team that they hope to have for the final 2 months of the season hasn't really played. Too many critical parts have either not played at all or played a very minimal role this year. And so it is going to be interesting what they do. I know, there's a lot of thought internally, amongst the league that Seattle's, not a team that's going to run away with it. I think I'm more bullish on the Mariners than most. But the reality is with a third wild card spot, you're likely not going to be totally out of it. The challenge is always when you're in that kind of gray area. It's not clear one way or the other. And I can't imagine that this team, with the personality of their general manager and Chris Young, who's very aggressive, coming off winning a World Series, that if they're in that gray area where it's not quite clear whether they should buy or should sell, I just can't see them selling. I could see them maybe being a little more conservative on the buying front, but I'd really have a tough time seeing them selling unless it is clear cut. But you just, unfortunately, with the way things have gone, you cannot rule out the possibility that 6 to 8 weeks from now, it's not more clear cut, and maybe the arrow is pointing in the direction of selling off some of these guys who are going to be free agents at the end of the year.
Completely agreed with that sentiment. The Rangers almost certainly are not going to be selling. If they're buying and considering some of the guys are going to be getting back over the next month plus, what do you think a position of need might be if they are on the market looking to add that one additional piece?
Yeah, and that's the other confusing thing too, is because you're going to have some of these guys coming back right around the time of the trade deadline, and you're just not sure what you're going to get from them. I think Evan Carter is probably trending right around that time. All-Star break maybe shortly thereafter. Josh Young, hopefully a little bit before the All-Star break. Jacob deGrom will be after the trade deadline. Tyler Mahle will be right around the trade deadline. But I think that a right-handed bat is going to be something they would target, someone to help them hit lefties, because hey, Robbie Grossman is really good against lefties, but Robbie Grossman shouldn't be hitting third against lefties, right? And I think they know that. And Josh Young maybe fits that mold, but they really miss, that Mitch Garver and Josh Young against lefties. Obviously Josh Young's been hurt. He's going to come back, but Mitch Garver's not coming back. He was really good against lefties. So someone, maybe a right-handed bat, corner outfield type spot. And again, this is all contingent upon the Rangers, having these guys healthy. I think you got to look at maybe getting some power at first base. Unfortunately, Nathaniel Lowe, as good as he is at getting on base, the power's just kind of left him. I think he's gone 18 straight games without an extra base hit, and they really need some power from that spot. So hopefully he can turn it around. But if not, maybe that's time they consider. I don't think, as crazy as it is, unless there's a guy they can buy with multiple years of control, I don't think starting pitching is going to be a huge priority. Just because they have demonstrated a great level of depth. But I think, obviously bullpen will be a big priority. And I think that probably goes for any team that's contending. So, that market has always been and will remain very competitive at the deadline. And, relievers just don't go for cheap these days, especially the high quality relievers that you want to add at that time to fortify your bullpen.
All right, before we let you go, the obligatory USC question that we have. First year in the Big Ten. Look, they open it up in Las Vegas against LSU. The schedule, I think they got a fairly decent hand for first year in the Big Ten. It's not the Gators schedule this year, but it's not too easy. It's not too tough. It's pretty fair. What do you think year one Big Ten for your Trojans?
Yeah, I think it's transitional. They're obviously going to a new quarterback in Miller Moss, presumably, right? He's going to be the guy, and hopefully he performs at a level where they don't need to make a change. And I think, someone asked me, do they need to change their offense? I don't think they need to change their offense. I think, they could maybe find some advantages with the more physical, rougher, but maybe not as fast in the open field Big Ten defenses, but their defenses need to toughen up or their defense. And so, I know they've been very active in the transfer portal. I know recruiting's gone well so far, but, they're going to have to really change the way that they attack things on defense because if you were to just take their defense this year, forget the fact that they suck. If you just took the fact that they're all six, their best linebackers 6'4", $150, that's not going to fly in the Big Ten. So I don't expect even with the expanded playoffs this year, right? Yeah. So even with the expanded playoff, I guess they'll maybe compete. I don't expect them to make it, but I am hopeful that maybe after a year transitioning their roster over to one that's more befitting of Big Ten football, that they'll be ready to compete. But I'll be honest, my expectations are low for them this year, including that first game in Vegas, in which they're going to get their ass kicked by
LSU. Our producer Garrett Ross, LSU fan, just pumped his fist. Jared, enjoy your off day, and thanks for
game one of the NBA Finals. Let's go.
That's right. What do you got, Mavs? I got Mavs in 6.
Well, I predicted the Mavs are going to lose every series, and it's worked out favorably for me from a fan standpoint. The Mavs are my first love. If you want my honest answer, I think it depends on how healthy Porzingis is. I don't care that he's playing. I need to know if he's healthy and can really impact the series. If he can, then I think that's going to be tough sledding for the Mavs. And if it is a very healthy version of Porzingis, I would say Celtics in 5. If not, then give me the Mavs in 6. But I've picked against them the whole way, so I think I almost want to pick against them just to keep that vibe going.
Yeah, so Celtics in 5 from Jared Sandler. There we go. They've won enough, Jared. They've won enough.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Those guys.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you again.
See you, fellas.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared.
One of my